Hi there, and welcome back to Lost in Livi. You join me at the Union, in the car park of the Union Inn at Loch 16 on the Forth and Clyde Canal. I was out here yesterday and I did a wee loop around about, can't remember, 20 mile or so around about Falkirk. Totally messed up the video. So today I've done a wee bit more research and I've found a map of a route called the Helix and Around Town Tour. Now I'm part somewhere on the route, I'm part way around the route, but it's a complete loop, so I guess anybody could start wherever. This will take me up by the Falkirk Wheel, up through Rough Castle Tunnel, along the Union Canal to the back of Falkirk High Station, and then the route zigzags down through Calendar Woods, past Calendar House, around Westquarter Glen, down to Lauriston, and then back round by the Falkirk Football Stadium into the Helix Park, and then back up the shores of the River Carron, which I've never really been up there before, and eventually rejoining the Forth and Clyde Canal down somewhere near the Tamford Hill Locks, and then I'll be back up here to Loch 16. So we'll see how we get on. I've got my Brompton with me, it's all folded up, packed up, ready to go. Well, not ready to go, I've still got to unfold it and get going. I've downloaded and printed off my wee map and my wee route with all the places of interest to see on the way, and let's hope that it works today. Join me on the route. Ready to go. Just about. Put the bike together. People sometimes ask me, why did I buy a Brompton? This is the reason. It folds, and when you fold it up, all the oily bits are enclosed within the fold, which makes it really good for putting in the camper van. Today I've come to Falkirk to follow a waymarked cycle trail around the town. It's called the HArTT cycle route. It's an abbreviation of Helix Around Town Tour. A leaflet describing the route and the places of interest to be found on it that I discovered online claims it to be a challenging 28.6 kilometre cycle route that uses Falkirk Council's award-winning path and cycle networks to complete a circular tour of the Falkirk area, taking in the Helix, home of the Kelpies, Forth and Clyde Canal, Falkirk Wheel, Union Canal, Calendar Park and Westquarter Glen before making its way back to the Helix. Until yesterday, I knew nothing of this route other than having seen some of the waymarker signs as I've cycled along the canal towpaths here. I was doing just that yesterday when I met a couple seeking directions at Rough Castle Tunnel. They were visiting the area on holiday, and with no local knowledge, they were lost. They were attempting to cycle the HArTT route based on a descriptive text of it they had found on the Helix website. The text on the website is accompanied only by some photographs and reference to the 3 styles of direction signage that are used on the waymarked trail, but with no obvious link to an actual map of the route. I was able to put the couple right as to their actual location, but the trail intrigued me. When I got home, I went online to see what I could find. Sure enough, the Helix website promotes the route, but only by text and pictures. However, I did eventually find a PDF version of a leaflet with a map and that described several places of interest to see or visit along the way. So today, I've parked the van in the car park by the Union Inn at Loch 16 on the Forth and Clyde Canal, and I'm on my way to see what discoveries I can make along the route. It's not far along the towpath before I arrive at the Falkirk Wheel. The Falkirk Wheel is the world's first and only rotating boat lift. It overcomes the 35-metre height difference between the Forth and Clyde Canal at the bottom and the Union Canal at the top. The 2 canals were previously connected by a flight of 11 locks which were closed in the 1930s and then filled in and dismantled in the decades that followed. The Falkirk Wheel was constructed as part of the Millennium Link, a multi-million-pound project to reconnect the two canals and to reopen the navigation between Bowling on the Clyde, Grangemouth on the Forth, and between Falkirk and Edinburgh. I was just too late to catch a rotation of the wheel. It's quite a tourist attraction, and tourist boats make regular trips on the wheel for a short return trip through Roughcastle Tunnel at the top before returning to the visitor centre below. The climb up the path to Roughcastle Tunnel is well worth the effort, if only for the fabulous views over the top of the Falkirk Wheel northwards towards the Ochil Hills. I can also vouch for the fact that taking in the view allows time for a dignified recovery after the effort of the climb. Roughcastle Tunnel takes its name from the well-preserved remains of the Roman fort just a little to the west that can be reached by the path that runs across the top of the tunnel entrance. The tunnel itself is cut through directly below the root of the Antonine Wall and was required to avoid disturbing the archaeological remains. Here's one of the tour boats turning to make its return trip back down the wheel. There's just a short climb now up past the Falkirk Wheel top locks, necessary to make the remaining height difference between the level required for Roughcastle Tunnel and the Union Canal. The Union Canal is a contour canal, so the towpath is level all the way from here to Lochran Basin in Edinburgh, some 32 miles away. Happy cycling. Not far along the towpath is Port Maxwell, where a terminus was built on the Union Canal to allow foot passengers travelling between Edinburgh and Glasgow to disembark and walk or hire a carriage down the hill to Port Downey on the Forth and Clyde Canal for an onward connection. It would take a full day for canal boats to negotiate the 11 locks down from here to Port Downey. As the towpath approaches the entrance to the Falkirk Tunnel, which is just beyond this cluster of direction signs, the HArTT route turns off to go around the car park at the back of Falkirk High Rail Station. This is where I make my first mistakes. I should have taken that rough track rather than the tarmac path through the car park. However, I found the other end of the rough track here, on the right, and I could just make out the HArTT route signs that can be seen on the bus stop pole across the road. I should have turned left after crossing the road, but was it because the bus stop was to the right of where I crossed that I turned right instead of left? Fortunately, I quickly realised my mistake when I found myself up a dead end. But why did the route have me cross the road there anyway? The path is far better and safer on the side of the station car park, and then to cross over directly opposite the track where I needed to be. Ah well, still more climbing to do. Hard work on a bike that's not geared for hills. The path continues upwards, turning left to cross an all-weather pitch towards Callander Woods, which can be seen coming into view in the distance ahead and to the left. Glen Bray Road has to be crossed to continue the path upwards towards the houses at the top of the hill. I didn't feel the visibility to either side was particularly good given the volume and speed of the traffic. There's a play park coming up on the left, and the HArTT route is signposted along a path that runs through the middle of it. Callander Woods is now straight ahead. As I entered the woods, the path changed to a well-made but stony surface and headed steeply downhill. It's what I was expecting. But I have to say I was glad to be wearing proper padded cycling shorts. Up to this point, the route signage has been, well, adequate when combined with some knowledge of the descriptive text of the route as given in the Helix website. At the bottom of the steep hill, where I expected to turn sharp right, there's a HArTT direction sign on one of the short wooden posts, but the arrow part of it was missing, presumably vandalised. It was also the last HArTT route sign I could find until I reached my exit from the wood. There was an abundance of coloured posts marking out what I presumed were different woodland trails, just no intact HArTT posts. At the back of my mind was the couple I'd met yesterday. If they'd made it this far, and with no local knowledge, there was absolutely nothing to guide them through the maze of paths and tracks in these woods. It's not the impression I'd be wanting visitors to my town to go away with. I never did find the route around Calendar House, its lake, or the mausoleum. In fact, had I not had the Ordnance Survey Maps app on my phone to help me pinpoint my position and a sketchy general knowledge of the area, I'd probably have turned around and retraced my wheel tracks. However, I pressed on and eventually passed a HArTT sign as I exited the woods onto an overgrown, narrow track that would lead me to the next section of the route through West Quarter Glen. The track spat me out onto New Hall Glen Road. Once again I had to cross a busy road with fast-moving traffic and poor visibility in either direction. Now, had I not read the descriptive text on the Helix website, I wouldn't have known that after crossing the road I should follow the path to the right along to the end of the crash barrier and then turn back on myself along the narrow track behind the barrier. There was absolutely no signage directing me to the path behind the barrier. But it was now beginning to feel like a real adventure. I was actually quite enjoying myself. With the path and the vegetation closing in on all sides, should I perhaps have brought a machete with me to cut my way through the undergrowth? This is West Quarter Glen. The map from the PDF leaflet that I'd found online and printed off wasn't much help here. This road bridge that I'm passing under and the housing estate that it connects with, New Hall Glen Road, didn't exist when the route map on the leaflet was produced. And then the footbridge that shows on the map as taking the West Quarter Glen path over the Edinburgh to Glasgow main line appears to have been removed. Instead, the path emerges me back onto New Hall Glen Road, opposite a path that I discovered leads back into Calendar Woods. I was really confused at this point. I just couldn't reconcile the printed route map from the leaflet with the OS Maps app and my generally good sense of direction. It took me a good 10 minutes to figure it out and to eventually go with my sense of direction. I duly found Reading Road and an entrance back into West Quarter Glen. But I wasn't out of the woods yet, pardon the pun. Confident that I was back on track, I still couldn't find HArTT route direction signs. Back out onto a residential road, I resorted once more to my sense of direction. A final check on the OS Maps app brought me to the end of the path where I should have emerged from West Quarter Glen. Now I just had to get across Polmont Road, another busy one with fast-moving traffic and very narrow pavements. This is the only on-road section of the route. It's just for a short stretch and there's not much traffic on it. The hilly, rough section is behind me, and at last it feels like I'm on the home straight. But that's not quite correct. A glance at my Garmin tells me that I've only covered about 14 kilometres of the 28-kilometre route. However, the surface is tarmac, the terrain is flattening out, and though I haven't travelled this path before, I know where I am and the general direction that I need to be travelling. I was momentarily confused here until I realised that the underpass below the Lauriston bypass was just a wee bit further on. This stretch of tarmac is smoother than the proverbial baby's bottom, and it feels like I'm rolling along effortlessly and making good progress at last. There's an example coming up of poor signage where the route turns right ahead and goes across the road. There's no signage whatsoever on the path leading up to the crossing, but as I make the crossing I see a marker post on the other side of the junction. At least it confirms that I made the correct turn. Here is yet another confusing turn. There's an end of cycle route sign and I can see what looks like a cycle path beyond on the other side of the road. In fact, the HArTT route turns right here alongside the road, but once again, no signage. The further on that I go around this supposedly waymarked route, I can feel my intolerance and frustration rising at the poor signage. There's a confusion of styles. The finger posts are so small that the font is effectively illegible from anything but close up to the signs. Many of the small squarish arrow signs look to have been moved to point in the wrong direction, and both of these sign types appear to have been mounted in many cases just on convenient nearby posts rather than on posts where they are of clear use to people like myself and the couple I met yesterday who are simply trying to follow a route in an area that they don't know that well. After all, it is promoted as a visitor attraction or activity. Some of the painted marker posts have been vandalised and others are missing or are overgrown by surrounding vegetation. I think that's me having a rant. For all that, I really am enjoying my ride, and in a perverse way I've actually enjoyed the challenge of discovering it. I'll just have to come back to do it once again once I've worked out where all the missing bits are. The cycling infrastructure where it has been implemented is of a really high standard, and I've got no grumbles about that. It's a joy to use. Well, I've reached the Kelpies, where the HArTT route officially begins and ends. However, I still have the first part of the route to do before I complete my circuit back at Loch 16 on the Forth and Clyde Canal. That's the River Carron on my right, and there's a welcome cooling breeze on my back. It's been a hot day out in the sun. Passing through Abbot's Haugh Woods and Cobble Brae, the path remains smooth as silk, and there are public art installations to spot along the way. This one is called Love and Kisses. Seems like a nice spot to take a photo of my Brommy. There's another road crossing here. The road is quiet, but once again I'm frustrated by the lack of HArTT signage to confirm that I'm on the correct path. Crossing the park towards the housing estate, I come upon a fairly obvious example of direction signage that's been moved around. It simply diminishes confidence in all of the signage when this is so obvious. I still pause to check on the OS Maps app. I'm almost back at the canal now, just Merchiston Road to cross. It's another busy, fast road, and the path leads up to this uncontrolled crossing. It's only once I get across that I spot another out-of-place HArTT fingerpost sign and a light-controlled crossing a bit further down the road. The route rejoins the Forth and Clyde Canal towpath opposite the former Rosebank distillery. Not far to go now. I think this is what's called a selfie bench coming up. I'll take a wee break to cool off by the water. Right, here I am on the banks of the Forth and Clyde Canal. Behind me you can make out the Loch 14. Ahead of me is Loch 15, and my ride finishes at the car park by Loch 16, so I'm nearly done. So it's been a really enjoyable ride, real mix of surfaces, and I must say for an awful lot of Falkirk's shared use path come cycle network infrastructure is really fantastic. The surfaces are brilliant, there's good signage, but that's kind of where it stops. I set out today to follow a marked trail, the HArTT trail, Helix Around Town Trail, abbreviated to HArTT. I presume it's set out by Falkirk Council, and the signage for that route is utterly appalling. I have been completely lost on at least 3 occasions, and I think had it not been for having
Ordnance Survey app on my phone and being able to find where I was on a map that way and get myself out of it. I could have been just about anywhere. I'm sorry, Falkirk Council, but your signage of this route is really appalling. I've missed an awful lot of the highlights that I was supposed to see on the route just because I've been concentrating trying to find the route. It'll be very interesting when I review the video when I get home and review my GPS data when I get home to see just how far I strayed from the route, and to see also whether I missed seeing some signs that were actually there. But some of the signs are very good, others they're completely missing. That apart, it's been a really enjoyable ride. It's a nice route, it's a nice circular route, about 30 kilometres. There's been a real mix of paths, really excellent, smooth as silk, cycling infrastructure, and woodland trail, which most folk would say a Brompton wasn't suitable for, but I haven't got any punctures yet, and I've got maybe about 400 or 500 metres to go. Anyway, I'm going to finish the ride, get into the van, chill down, maybe I think I've got a sandwich in the fridge, make myself a cup of tea, cool down, get changed into a fresh t-shirt before I head home. So catch up with you later.
And that's me back at the van. Henry's been sitting cool in the shade of the trees. I'll be freshening up while the kettle's on for a mug of tea before I head home. Thanks for riding with me. Lost in Livi. No, wait. Lost in Falkirk.